Ever walked into the bathroom, flushed the toilet, and watched in horror as the water started rising instead of going down? Maybe you've got guests coming over in 20 minutes, or it's the only bathroom in the house, and now you're standing there with a plunger that doesn't seem to be doing a thing. I've been there more times than I can count, both in my own home and on service calls. In this video, I'm going to show you 5 different methods to unclog any toilet, starting with techniques that don't require any tools at all and working up to the more heavy-duty approaches. The best part is at least one of these methods will work for your situation, guaranteed. And stick around to the end because I'm going to share a pro tip that can actually prevent most clogs from ever happening in the first place. Let's get into it. Knowing how to unclog a toilet is one of those essential homeowner skills that can save you a lot of money and a lot of embarrassment. The good news is that most toilet clogs are actually pretty easy to fix once you understand what's going on and use the right technique. You don't need to be a plumber, and you don't need expensive equipment. So let's start by understanding why toilets clog in the first place. Here's the thing most people don't realize. A toilet that won't flush properly is usually caused by one of 2 things. Either there's an obstruction somewhere in the bowl or the trap, or there's a problem with the guts inside the tank that's preventing a good flush. Before you start plunging away, it's worth taking 30 seconds to figure out which problem you're dealing with. What I usually do is take the lid off the tank and watch what happens when I flush. I'm looking to see if the flapper lifts all the way up, and if the tank empties completely into the bowl. If everything in the tank looks good, but the bowl still won't clear, then you know the problem is an obstruction. That's what we're going to focus on today because that's the most common issue by far. So let's start with diagnosing your specific situation because the right method depends on what you're dealing with. First, take a look at the water level in your bowl. Is it low, medium, high, or near overflowing? This matters a lot. If the water is all the way up to the rim or threatening to spill over, do not flush again. I repeat, do not flush again. You'll just make the flooding worse. In that case, you're going to skip ahead to the plunger or auger methods. But if the water level is low or medium, you've got more options, and we can start with the gentler techniques. Also, think about what might have caused the clog. Was it just normal use, or did something get dropped in there? Kids are famous for flushing toys, and I've pulled out everything from action figures to cell phones over the years. If you suspect a hard object, the auger is going to be your best bet. But for organic clogs, which is most of them, let's start with the easiest method first. This first method is perfect when the water level is low or medium and you've got a little bit of time. You don't need any special tools, just some dish soap and hot water from your tap. Here's how it works. Squirt a generous amount of dish soap into the bowl. I'm talking about a good quarter cup or so, maybe 4 or 5 big squirts. Let that sink down to the bottom for about 5 to 10 minutes. What the soap does is lubricate the walls of the drain and start breaking down the organic material that's causing the clog. While that's working, go fill up a bucket or a large pot with hot water from your tap. Now here's an important point. You want hot water, but not boiling water. Boiling water can actually crack the porcelain of your toilet bowl, and that's a repair bill you definitely don't want. Water from your hot tap is perfect. You're looking for about 1 gallon to 1.5 gallons. After the soap has had time to work, pour the hot water into the bowl from about waist height. Height gives you some extra force. Don't dump it all at once in a big splash. Pour it in a steady stream aimed right at the drain opening. The combination of the lubricating soap, the heat softening up the clog, and the force of the water is often enough to break things loose. I've seen this work on clogs that people thought were hopeless. If it doesn't work on the first try, you can repeat the process one more time. But if you've tried it twice and you're not making progress, it's time to move on to the next method. By the way, if you're finding this helpful so far, take a second to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future videos. All right, let's keep going. This next method is what plumbers call using hydrostatic pressure, which is really just a fancy way of saying we're going to use the weight and force of water to push the clog through. You're going to need a bucket that holds about 2 to 2.5 gallons of water. Fill it up from your bathtub or sink. Now, the key here is that this works best when the water level in the bowl is low. If the bowl is already full, skip this method and go straight to the plunger. But if you've got room to work with, this can be incredibly effective. Here's why it works so well. Your toilet tank only holds about 1.6 gallons of water. That's all you get with a normal flush. But when you dump 2.5 gallons all at once from a bucket, you're creating significantly more force than a regular flush ever could. Position yourself over the bowl and pour all the water in at one time. Don't be timid about it. You want that water going in fast to create maximum pressure. Aim for the drain opening, not the sides of the bowl. If the clog is soft or partial, this blast of water will often force it right through. I use this technique all the time on service calls, especially as a first attempt before I even break out the plunger. The downside is you obviously can't do this every time you flush, but it's a great way to clear a stubborn clog without getting your hands dirty. After you've done the bucket flush, throw some toilet paper in and try a regular flush to see if you've solved the problem. Now, we're getting into the method that most people think of first when they have a clog. But here's the thing. Most people use a plunger wrong. And they're often using the wrong type of plunger entirely. Let me show you how to do this right. First, let's talk about plungers. You've probably seen those red rubber plungers that look like a cereal bowl stuck on a stick. Those are actually designed for sinks, not toilets. What you want is called a flange plunger or a toilet plunger. It has a narrower extension that comes out of the bottom of the cup. This flange fits down into the drain opening of your toilet and creates a much better seal. That seal is everything. Without a good seal, you're just splashing water around and not creating any real pressure. Now here's the technique that makes all the difference. Before you start pumping, you need to get the air out of the plunger and fill it with water. Air compresses, but water doesn't. So if your plunger is full of air, all that energy you're putting into your plunge is just compressing the air instead of moving water. Submerge the plunger in the bowl at an angle to let it fill up with water. Once it's full, position the flange down into the drain opening and make sure you've got a good seal all the way around. Now, you're ready to plunge. Start with a gentle push to to settle the seal. Then give it several firm, steady pumps. You're not trying to splash water everywhere. You're trying to create pressure that pushes the clog through, or sometimes pulls it back up into the bowl. I've seen all kinds of things come back up after a good plunging session. Pens, small toys, even eyeglasses that fell out of someone's pocket when they bent over. Give it 15 to 20 good pumps, then pull the plunger out and see if the water drains. It's draining slowly. You're making progress. Repeat the process. If the water drains quickly, throw some toilet paper in and give it a test flush. One more tip here. When you're done plunging, have a plastic garbage bag ready. That plunger is going to be dirty, and you don't want to drip that water across someone's bathroom floor. Slip it right into the bag. If the plunger isn't getting the job done, it's time to bring out the toilet auger, also called a closet auger or toilet snake. This is different from a regular drain snake. A toilet auger has a protective rubber boot on the end that prevents you from scratching the porcelain, and it has a fixed handle that makes it easy to crank. The cable is usually about 3 to 6 feet long, which is enough to reach past the built-in trap in your toilet where most clogs get stuck. Here's how to use it. The business end of the auger is a corkscrew-shaped head that's designed to either break up a clog or grab onto it so you can pull it out. Start with the cable fully retracted so that corkscrew end is up inside the protective boot. Insert the boot end into the drain opening of your toilet. The boot curves to match the shape of the toilet trap, so angle it to follow that curve. Once it's in position, start cranking the handle while pushing forward gently. You'll feel the cable feeding through the trap. When you hit resistance, that's probably your clog. Keep cranking to either break through it or hook onto it. I usually push through about 3 feet of cable, then retract it and see what comes out. Don't be surprised if what comes back is pretty nasty. That's just the nature of the job. Have a bucket or bag ready to catch whatever the auger brings back. After you've run the auger through a couple of times, flush the toilet and test it with some toilet paper. 9 times out of 10, between the plunger and the auger, your clog is history. This last method is one that not a lot of people know about, but it can be a lifesaver in certain situations, especially if you suspect a hard object is causing the clog. You're going to need a wet-dry vacuum for this. Do not try this with a regular household vacuum. A regular vacuum is not designed to handle water, and you'll destroy it or create a dangerous situation. A wet-dry shop vacuum is built to suck up liquids. First, set the vacuum to liquids mode and remove any paper filter that might be inside, since that filter would get ruined by water. Now, here's the process. Start by vacuuming out as much water from the bowl as you can. This gives you room to work and lets you actually see what you're dealing with. Once the water level is down, take the hose and create a seal around the drain opening at the bottom of the bowl. You might need to wrap a rag around the hose to get a good seal. Turn on the vacuum and let it run for 30 seconds to a minute. The suction can often pull out whatever is causing the obstruction. This is particularly effective for hard objects like toys, bottles, or anything that wouldn't break up with a plunger. I once pulled out a small shampoo bottle that a toddler had flushed. The parents had been fighting that clog for 2 days before I got there. 1 minute with the shop vac, and problem solved. After you tried the vacuum, put some water back in the bowl and do a test flush. If it's draining freely, you're back in business. Let's talk about some common problems you might run into and how to handle them. First, what if the plunger won't create a seal? This usually happens because there's not enough water in the bowl. You need water to create that seal around the flange. Add some water from a bucket until the rubber part of the plunger is submerged. Then try again. Also make sure you're using a flange plunger, not a cup plunger designed for sinks. Second, what if water keeps rising even when you're not flushing? This means you've got a serious blockage and water from elsewhere in the house might be backing up into the toilet. Stop using all water in the house until you clear the clog. This situation often requires an auger or even a call to a professional because the clog might be further down the main line. Third, what if the clog keeps coming back? Recurring clogs usually mean one of two things. Either there's a partial obstruction that you're not fully clearing, like tree roots in the sewer line or a foreign object lodged in the trap. Or your toilet just doesn't have enough flushing power due to mineral buildup or a problem in the tank. Try running the auger through a few extra times to make sure you fully cleared the line. If it keeps happening, you might need a professional to run a camera down the line to see what's going on. Fourth, what about those fizzing tablets or chemical drain cleaners? I generally don't recommend chemical drain cleaners for toilets. They can damage older pipes, they're harmful to septic systems, and they often don't work very well on toilet clogs anyway. The mechanical methods I've shown you are safer and more effective. Fifth, what if absolutely nothing is working? If you've tried all 5 methods and you're still clogged, the obstruction is probably beyond the toilet itself, somewhere in the drain line. At that point, it's time to call a plumber who can use a powered auger or camera inspection to find and clear the blockage. There's no shame in calling a pro when you've hit your limit. Now, for that bonus tip I promised you at the beginning. This one can actually prevent most toilet clogs from happening in the first place. It's all about flushing habits and being honest about what your toilet can handle. Here's the deal. Modern low-flow toilets only use 1.6 gallons per flush. That's great for your water bill, but it means there's not a lot of power behind each flush. The number one cause of toilet clogs in homes is simply using too much toilet paper at once. I tell people to use the half-roll rule. If you need to use more than about half the amount of paper that would fit in your hand, flush first and then continue. 2 smaller flushes are way better than 1 clog. Also, and I know this should go without saying, but the only things that should ever go in a toilet are human waste and toilet paper. Those flushable wipes, they're not really flushable. I've pulled hundreds of them out of clogged pipes over the years. They don't break down like toilet paper does. Same with feminine products, cotton balls, and anything else. If it didn't come out of your body or isn't toilet paper, it goes in the trash. Follow that rule, and you'll avoid the vast majority of clogs. So that's everything you need to know about unclogging any toilet. If this video saved you from calling a plumber or just saved you some frustration, I'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe and hit that bell icon. And if you've got any questions or your own tips that have worked for you, drop them in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.